Monday the 30th of September 2019. This is Marlborough Primary School. As the families arrive at school for the start of the day, they find themselves transported back to September 1939, just after the outbreak of World War II. Today marks the start of a 6-week Marlborough Lest We Forget project, an interactive project designed to deliver the experience of what it would have been like to be a pupil during World War II. A journey across Anderson shelters, Dig for Victory gardens, to experiencing evacuation protocols. At the heart of this project was a desire to reach out to members of the local community who had been pupils at Marlborough during World War II. Apart from the school logbook recording that part of the school was destroyed during a bombing raid in 1941, so little was known about the personal stories of pupils whose day-to-day lives were overshadowed by the war. These past pupils are now in their 80s and 90s, and capturing and recording their oral histories would be our legacy for future generations of pupils. Over a series of interviews, their stories started to unfold, their wonderful personalities shone through. Their wartime memories, experiences and emotions painted a very vivid and at times moving picture. We are so very grateful that these wonderful past pupils share their incredible memories with us, and in turn that we can share them with you. Their stories speak for themselves, so sit back and delight in their personal testimonies. This is Marlborough Lest We Forget.
How did you feel when you heard about the war?
I will tell you, I was 4.5 years old and it was a Sunday morning, and I was sitting on the table in our little breakfast room, and my mother was trying to curl my hair because I had very straight hair and she wanted me to have curly hair. And the news came on that this country on the radio is now at war with Germany.
Oh, excited. I know that may sound stupid, but you see, it's propaganda. The government tells you that these bad Germans and bad this, and they're doing that, and they're going to do this, and if they got you, they would do that and do this and the other. And I mean, people like my father and that age group who were in the First World War, you know, they were prepared to have a go. I mean, the Home Guard and things like that were people flocked to join, and people flocked to join the army because, you know, we were going to beat the Germans. I got to put it to you as crudely as that, really. That's what we were going to do.
Are your current dreams linked to the war?
Dreams.
I don't remember.
I can't remember dreams. Can you remember what you dreamt last week? It's very, very difficult to remember dreams. They
Yes.
come for a little while and then they go. But memories stay a long time, don't
Yes,
they?
yes.
And what goes in your memory now, whether it's a good one or a bad one, you can never get rid of. And I think sometimes when you've got a computer and you've got a memory on it, you don't want it, you just press the delete button. And I think sometimes I wish I had a delete button, and then I could get rid of all the memories that I don't want.
Yes.
But what we've got in there is there
It
good.
stays,
And
yes.
you've got to be careful to make good memories for other people
Yes.
as well as yourself.
How did it feel being in lesson time and then just hearing the siren of a bomb coming?
In my school, it was absolutely horrible, and it was much more frightening than any bomb, because we had this old house over there. It had a cellar. It didn't have an air raid shelter outside. It had a cellar underneath. And it was very damp, and it was painted, you know that sort of Halloween horrible green, that creepy green? It was painted like that. And I used to be so scared of going down in it. I really did. And, we had to go. Of course, I'd be hovering, get down there. All right. But no, I was, we didn't have that many daytime raids, really. Not that many. It was mainly at night. But we certainly had a few when I was in school. And when I was at my grandmother's, she had a cellar as well, but hers was a very nice cellar, painted white, not creepy green.
Were you nearby when the bomb hit Marlborough?
Yeah, quite near. Our windows and doors got smashed. No, that's what. Door came in, landed on its side in the hall. The windows were broken. Okay.
And when the school was bombed, were you still in school like normal?
It wasn't here the next morning. I can
No,
remember.
It was in the middle of the night. It was.
Yeah.
The
And I can remember the
So
next
was it?
morning coming down to the school and the firefighters were still here
yeah.
trying to put the things out.
Were any of your houses damaged by the bombing?
Yours
Yes,
was?
mine was, because it was just along here in Marlborough Road. And the first 3 houses from the corner here in Agincourt were flattened, as was the school. And we were the next house, and all the back of it came in. And we were sleeping downstairs, as people did in those days if they didn't have a shelter.
Did you rebuild it?
Yes, well, I think they just rebuilt the back, but the first 3 were rebuilt.
We had air raids, but we all had air raid shelters. And this, for us in Marlborough Road, or indeed Albany Road and halfway up the hill, this whole site, it got bombed in 1941. The whole of this new area was just an open bomb site. And it was the best adventure playground you could ever hope to have. And we played here every single day.
It's only, I think, only once that I can remember that we say, that bombs were dropped when we were in school. I think it was only about once.
How long did it take to rebuild Marlborough School?
I don't remember. Quite a long time.
Well, they never rebuilt it, obviously, because it was, it was a big, huge school, big school, big. If you have a look in Marlborough picture, you'll see how big it was.
It was, they didn't know about this at this school, but I did. It must have been about 1944, I suppose. And we were very cross because they cleared the site, they put up all these tents, and they moved a complete American regiment in, a black regiment. But we didn't mind because they were so kind and so much fun. They taught us to play baseball. They didn't mind. We played a bit in the street, hitting the ball and catching the ball and that.
As I said, the shells that they fired at the planes, they splintered, and you find this. And the next day we would all go to school with our matchboxes and things like that, showing off what sort of shrapnel we had. Bits of metal, which sounds absolutely stupid now, but at your age, we used to show off how much shrapnel we'd managed to capture it or get. So it was exciting. And until you actually, as I say, until January the 2nd, I mean, there were lots of bombs in Cardiff. One went through, landed in a ship in the dock, went straight through and blew, killed a lot of people. But it was in the dock, so it was nothing to do with us. We were up there,
And the really wonderful thing about those wonderful Americans, they had chewing gum and chocolate. And they gave us chewing gum and chocolate till we knew no more. For children whose chocolate ration was a bar of 1 week's ration would be my mother used to cut a Mars bar into 7 slices for me to have one a day. And so to suddenly have these people who were giving you chocolate and playing ball were doing wonderful. And that must have been, I think they left there, it must have been after D-Day, because I think they left from here and went to France. So it was probably summer of 1944, I think. I tried to look it up, I can't work it. And after them, we had a British regiment in, and they were quite miserable. I think they'd been in the war for much longer, and they didn't have chewing gum or chocolate. So they were a dead loss.
I wasn't affected by the bombing as such, like Audrey was, but I was sitting in my mother's house sitting room, reading, I think, and all of a sudden there was a bang because the planes were going over, and all the window at the back of me came in like that, poof. And it was because that was the bomb going off and the window shattered. And so all we did was go out and collect the shrapnel. Have you heard of shrapnel?
Yes.
Yes.
That all you
We
kids used to go out, all of your age, and collect the shrapnel.
If there was like loud noises outside and you couldn't sleep, what would you have done to get to sleep?
Oh gosh.
You didn't sleep?
Didn't sleep much, no, if there was air raids, because sometimes
If it was noisy, you just didn't
Yes.
sleep. And you still
The
went to
siren
school in the
would
morning,
go.
you didn't stay in bed, you still
No.
went to school.
I went to school, and then you'd have an air raid in school, you'd have to go to the shelter.
But everybody, they had, if you like, 2 types of official shelters and a home shelter. The home shelter, people stayed under the stairs, because that was supposed to be, if the bombs hit the house, the stairs would remain standing.
Well, I was sleeping under the stairs
Yes.
with my sister, and when the bomb dropped, the stairs moved out from the wall about 6 inches.
Yeah. And then the other 2 shelters, there was what they called an Anderson shelter, which they supplied and put in your garden, which is corrugated steel, which they covered with earth. Right, so if you're supposed to if you had an air raid, you go out and go into that. Or there was a Morrison shelter, called a Morrison shelter, which you had in the house, which is like a big steel table
You used to get
with
under it.
a wire netting
The cage.
cage, that's right. So you just, if you want, you just
You needed
dive out of there.
big
and hope
kitchen
for
or
the
something to
best.
put on it, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a special shelter built in our house, it just had big sort of props there, so if the ceiling came down it would stop it.
Yes.
But we had a double bed in ours.
That's,
It was nice,
that's why
comfortable.
people used to sleep downstairs, you see, because the roof would come in just from the blast from bombs, and so you were safer downstairs.
I don't know how you would feel if you were woken about 2 o'clock in the morning and taken down into an air raid shelter, maybe in a cellar in your house with a few other people. You probably wouldn't go back to sleep, would you? And next day, can you imagine how you'd be in school? Very sleepy. Well, it didn't take John's mother or my mother long to work out the way around this. So John and I were put to bed down in the garden in the air raid shelter every night for about 2 years.
I can remember when heard the bombs coming down, and my grandfather had put his arm up like this to pray, asking God to pray. And I just grabbed his arm and did this because I wanted to hug something like that. So that was my memory of hearing things coming down.
The bombs used to make a whistling sign.
Yes, I could
Yeah.
hear the whistle.
Whistle.
I remember the whistle.
Boom.
Boom. Yeah.
So that's how you could hear them coming. So you just crossed your fingers and hid under the table or something like that.
It was a night. It was that night I had a beautiful china doll. Remember, I'm just 8. And they had a little cot beside my bed I was put in. Now, after we came back up after the raid, my bed was covered in glass where the window had gone in. So if I'd been lying in bed, I'd been covered in glass. But what really upset me was the glass had chipped my doll's face. And I was very, very cross about that. Never really forgave the Luftwaffe for that. My beautiful doll. So, but that was what the effect was. The glass had come in and you couldn't have stayed in your room.
I was in bed under the stairs with my sister in the house, a couple of doors along. And I just heard there'd been a raid, so we were all awake in the house, sleeping downstairs as we did in those days. And I heard the gunfire and all that, and then there was a loud whistling noise, which I presume was the plane coming down, and then there was just a big bang, and all the house fell in at the back.
When the German bombers came over the channel, they split up, some went one way, some went the others, and what was called the Royal Observer Corps, they would tell you which way they were coming.
Boys of my age were recruited by the air raid wardens to communicate, because they didn't have phones or anything like that between them. So boys of our age were recruited. If we had bicycles, we could, air raid warden down the road would say, go see air raid warden up there and tell him so and so and so and so. So that's what we used to do. Ride between, yeah.
They never told me.
So if you had a siren, you knew that they were coming towards you. Very often they were flying over Britain every day, but they would either go on to London or go, up the Midlands. If they were coming, you knew that you had roughly 3/4 of an hour before they actually came over.
I can't remember what we did with all our stuff or anything, because I was only little, but we had to get out straight away.
A lot of our windows went. You
Yes.
had to go around in the morning, they'd been blown out.
Yes,
And I had to go around and count how many were missing.
yes. But in those days they used to stick paper on the windows, remember?
Like they've done downstairs, haven't you? These, yes, it's in the windows, and the wind used to come in, and we just had one coal fire, so all the coal had to be carried up 2 flights of stairs to light a fire. And I used to sit there with my gloves on most of the time. But my grandma cut up her lace curtains and stuck them on the windows.
Oh.
Instead of having, because we were a bit posher. So that's my memory of the windows going.
Yes.
What was the scariest thing that happened to you during the war?
I wasn't scared, I was angry. One of my very best friends who lived in Pennyland Road, the last big raid on Cardiff was May the 18th, 1943. And I was with her on the Tuesday evening, and we were going to dancing on a Saturday. She didn't go to my school. I think she went to, this had closed this part, so she must have been in Albany Road, I think, by then. And I said, see you on Saturday, and I walked home. And that night her house was bombed and she was killed. And she was 9. And we went round, this other friend of mine, because we were out to see rode through the police cordon and had a poke around, but she'd been taken away, because she'd been taken away. But I do remember it was a Saturday morning, and I was getting ready to go to dancing. I met her, and we used to meet and get the bus just outside here. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be late for Mavis, I'm going to be late. And I suddenly thought, Mavis is dead. And I was so angry. I never cried, but I was so angry. I wanted the war to go on for another 10 years till I could join up. And that was how I felt. That was my close friend dying.
But when you started seeing people getting hurt, your whole attitude changed. You sort of realised that war is not a game. This is a very personal thing, but if a bullet hits you, it goes, which I had one there, it goes in and makes a little hole like that. When it goes in, it makes a hole like that when it comes out the back of your leg. If you're lucky, it goes right through. If it sticks inside, then obviously they got to dig it out. But that's by the way. Makes a little hole like that, tiny hole. You don't feel it actually for a bit, and it comes out there, and it leaves a great big scar like that.
Did you ever get evacuated or any of your friends?
Evacuated?
Yeah.
No, I didn't, because my father built this wonderful air raid shelter. I was the only child. A lot of my friends were evacuated. Cynthia was evacuated down to a farm down further West Wales.
There was an air raid shelter as far as the playground was concerned, right down the end. We all had to go like stick to get into the air raid shelter, which was right at the far end there.
Did you ever have any flooding in your Anderson shelter?
Flooding? No, because my father was a very clever engineer. He was a brilliant engineer, and he dug it. A lot of air raid shelters did, but he was he was used to building. He put up factories all over the place, so he really knew what he was doing. And our air raid shelter was really wonderful. It was absolutely solid. It had solid steel walls around it. Very good air raid shelter. We're lucky.
Did you have a gas mask?
Oh yes.
Do you still have it?
I do, at home. Well, then there's mine, it might be my aunt's, but you had to carry them for certainly the first 2 or 3 years, and they were a nuisance. You know, you had to string it around you if you were trying to run or play. You just had, we never ever had to use them, because they never used gas. Never. On us in that Second World War. They used it in the First World War, not at all in the Second World War, as far as we were concerned. But we had to carry them all the time. And they were heavy. And, you know, you couldn't sort of pop it down somewhere, you should probably forget it.
So some people used it, but not many people that I knew used it.
In school we had to put them on for practice, didn't we?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Horrible.
Half an hour or something. Oh, they were horrible things.
Smelly things.
Yes. So, and you daren't come to school without them, otherwise they'd send you home to fetch it. Everybody had to have their gas mask with them all the time. And when we went into the shelters, we used to take the gas masks. Yes.
What sort of food would you have eaten
On food?
after and before the war, and how is it different to the food during the war?
Well, we were quite young when it started, but rations were quite strict. Obviously, I've told you about sweets, you know, not being 10. I was saying now, everyone had a ration book, and I found this quite interesting. I couldn't quite understand it. You had to go and put your ration book with one particular grocer. You know, it wasn't up to you. And that was for the basics. That would have been, I think, for eggs, butter, cheese, bacon, sugar, tea. And then you had some spare points you could spend anywhere else, you know, but not that many.
I don't think bread was rationed.
No, bread
was
wasn't rationed and vegetables weren't.
No.
But we'd never seen a banana,
Oh no.
we'd never seen a lemon,
Or an
anything
orange.
like that. And you were asked to grow your own a lot.
Yes.
But we grew them like that, and my brother had an allotment across the road in the park here, and there was no gardens there, and it was all dug up and to dig for victory. And everybody had their own little plot and made their own vegetables.
People used the parks as, you know, people could have sites in them. They were all potatoes and beans and carrots and onions, all growing where we might have played, and, you know, they didn't go a bundle on children running across them.
Potatoes weren't rationed, you see, so you could have potatoes and you could have bread. And that was about it. But anything to put on the bread,
It was a different matter, yeah.
it didn't...
I can remember when I was in Roath Park School, one of the girls had her father came home from abroad somewhere with a banana, and we'd never seen a banana. We were all gathering around it, you know, but of course it was only one banana, so we couldn't all have a taste.
Very few people, didn't know anyone, who had a fridge. There were no fridges, so people shopped almost every day. Also, rations weren't, you know, you might not be able to go in and buy a whole week's ration at one go. You know, you might be going to have 2 ounces of butter. They might say, I'm going to give you an ounce today, you have to come back tomorrow or the next day. So they spent, mothers, grandmothers, women, spent an awful lot of time shopping and queuing up for things. And you see, there were no such thing as supermarkets. You had to go to a different shop, like if you wanted potatoes or peas, or you went to a greengrocer's. If you wanted your things like I've said, sugar, butter, you went to the grocer's. If you wanted meat, you went to a butcher's. If you wanted fish, you went to a fishmonger's. They all take a lot of time, this does. And in every one you'd queue up for a long time. So shopping was really, took up an awful lot of time. During holidays, you had the option of going and standing in queues with your mother and being very cross and miserable. So mothers jumped very quickly to the idea of go off and play, go on down the bomb site. And we all went out to play from the age of about 6 and 7, and no one ever supervised us over anything. Today, teachers and parents would be horrified that we all looked after each other and none of us ever came to any harm. And that was why. Because we, standing in a queue for 2 hours for an onion, oh come on.
I remember just buying bread and eating that because it wasn't rationed. You had to go into a separate shop. There wasn't a superstore like today, so the grocers would sell the butter and the cheese and everything, and then you'd have to go into the greengrocers to buy your vegetables, you'd have to go into the bakery to buy your bread, and then you'd have to go to the butcher's to buy the meat. And the meat was rationed, and you had 1 and 2pence worth of meat a week. You wouldn't know how much that was, would you?
Nobody had food in the school. You all went home. And if you didn't have I don't mean you didn't have a home to go to, but if your parents were working, you usually went home with somebody who did have parents at home.
All the children came home from school, didn't they? But then it was 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock. 2 hours for lunch, wasn't it? Back at 2, finish at 4.
We've learnt about the blackouts. What was the feeling of that?
Nuisance.
You had to have a little torch with you to see where you were
You had
going.
to remember all the time
Yes.
that
Even if there was a little tiny bit of light showing.
you couldn't show any lights.
Well, everybody, it was in pictures here, had to have a siren suit, and what it was, you'd call it a onesie today, I think, no? You fit it completely from your ankles right up, zip up the front, right under, and hood on the top. A very, very warm material. And, it was law, really, you had to have one. Because if an air raid came in the night, you would try to get dressed into something, or even dressing a very clumsy. They were big enough, you put them all over, whether you were wearing a night dress or pyjamas. You put this siren suit over, zipped it up, put your hood on, and you could easily then go down steps, you've got trousers on. You haven't got a long dressing gown trailing around you. Everyone, men, women, everyone had one. And I ran some pictures off, because I'm showing them just now. My mother had a very smart one. It was navy blue with a red trimming. My aunt made it. Very posh. Now, those are children's siren suits, you see. You pass it around. See them? They're very warm material, and you kept it on the bottom of your bed, and as soon as the siren went in, if you went to put the bed to sleep in the first place, you put your siren suit on straight away. So you could, get out easily and go down in the air. And even Winston Churchill, who was Prime Minister, had a siren suit, so there. And he wore it when there was an air raid on. Yeah, you see, everyone had to have one. It wasn't you all had a siren suit. My dad had one. My mother had one. The lady next door, Auntie Edna, had one. And that's what, people forget about that, but they were, they put it just on the bottom of your bed, so the minute the siren went, off you went. It was a good idea, really, because we'd been, trying to move. You didn't have time to get dressed, to get dressed and it would take too long. You might, use, and to try wandering about down in the ground in a long dressing gown, not really on, is it? Not really. So we all had siren suits.
In like these days now, when you're like walking somewhere or you're in like shopping, do any memories come back from the war?
Oh yes, yes. Have you got any? I've got a memory just outside this entrance. Every time I pass it, I think of an ice cream man. Strange, not a van. He had a bike.
Oh yes.
And there was stop me and buy one. And the front of this bike was like 2 wheels, and there was a big like a freezer thing in the front. And I've got some pictures, but they've on the computer and I haven't got the Wi-Fi. But we used to go up to this man and give them what they wanted. The cheapest one was 1 penny. And I've got a penny I can show you later. And my nana met me from school and I asked for an ice cream. She didn't have a penny. She only had a halfpenny. So what did the man do? He got out the penny one and it was in like a cardboard tube and he cut it in half and he gave me half an ice cream for my halfpenny. And that's how poor we were. I was really excited about this halfpenny thing, and I've got something on YouTube about these little girls taking an ice cream and having a lick.
Before the war, how did your parents make money?
They didn't.
Well, my father had a building firm. So
My father had a building firm.
My father was unemployed. So we didn't have much money coming in at all. And my brother said to my mum once, I like it when Daddy's out of work because we have pea soup. And that's all she had in the pantry was a packet of dried peas. She used to soak these peas in water and then boil them up and make a green soup.
Lived a contented life. Life has been very, very, very good to me and to us as a family. You know, they say if you fill up all your life, you haven't got time to, you go to bed, you're so tired, you go to sleep.
How old were you when the war ended?
14, 15. Yeah, about 14, yes.
How old was I? When did it end? 45?
45.
32, 42.
32 from 45?
No,
13.
13.
She's very good at arithmetic.
If you could change one part of your life, would it have to not been going through the war?
That's a good question.
Yes, well,
Yes, I think so. It could have been a happier time.
Yeah.
You don't realise it
I think if
until
we'd
you
have
go
been
back.
older, we wouldn't have wanted to go through it again.
No.
But at our age, we didn't really understand all what was going on, did we?
We just thought it was normal.
Yes,
Yeah. Looking back, it was anything but normal.
yes.
But you don't realise it until you get a bit older.
Older,
and you're
yes,
looking back.
yes.
And when you're older, you'll look back here and you'll think, it was a nice school. And the people were nice in it, hopefully. And I can remember the very time that it finished. I was walking out from my house in Westwell Road into the park, and across the road there was a wounded soldier. You knew they were wounded because they had blue suits on, bright blue tops and bright blue trousers. And he said, I was 14 then, and he said, the war's finished. And you get that lovely feeling as though you just kind of float upwards.
And it was all
Everything
sweethearts,
sort of going, you were floating up on air. It was a lovely feeling there.
Like a feeling of freedom.
Because there were
Yes,
soldiers
that's right.
billeted in all the houses at Pennyland Hill. Did you remember that? All at Pennyland Hill. On the school opposite Howardian. Well, Howardian.
I kept saying, I'm still going, you have lost.